the obvious question, in your opinion, how do you sum up what went wrong this year?
Well, it's probably a long answer, and one will take some time, Eric, over the next few days here to really dissect it. We've been going through it, although we've just finished playing. The last week since being officially eliminated, you start to answer those questions. I look at this team as in my mind, it was a good team that underachieved. Clearly, there's some holes that we needed to fill or need to fill. I guess the best way to put it, there's some holes that we failed to fill. And going forward, we'll need to address. I think if you look at this season, it was marked by being consistently inconsistent. We never really got on that roll. Like you go through it, and the longest streak we put together was 3 games, but not just the result, but almost how we played. I think until the last 5 weeks, 6 weeks, even on nights when we didn't get the result, I thought our team game was in a much better place. We weren't giving up a whole bunch. We went through a stretch where we didn't score enough, but our team game and what we weren't leaving a lot on the table in terms of giving up a lot. And I think those are, that gives you an opportunity to be successful. But we just didn't get it done. And it starts with myself that you look at the team, and you go through it, parts of time we didn't score enough. So you look back, you brought in some people that I thought may be able to contribute to that. They didn't for different reasons. So those are all areas that we're gonna sit and evaluate over the course of the next couple of days here, and look to address moving forward.
Can you just talk a little bit about, I don't think it's any secret that you've got some pretty tough decisions to make for the expansion draft, and Mark Giordano spoke a little bit about it. Can you just talk about his future with the organization?
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody knows there's an expansion draft coming up, and him and I have spoken about that. We'll keep that internal for now. But we'll make decisions like everybody else has to make, as far as Gio, he's been, in my mind, he's been the conscious of this team for a long time since I've been here. He sets the tone for the group on and off the ice. I've had the good fortune to be around good leaders in my career, and I put him up at the top of the list. But there is a business side of this, and we'll sit down as a group and make some decisions as we get closer to the expansion draft.
And finally, Brad, the last question. I know you probably sit down and talk with ownership with regularity. Have you guys had a talk, about your future moving forward at all?
No, we haven't had one. I'm sure we will over the course, as we usually do at the end of the season. Today was about getting through player meetings and all those kind of meetings, and we'll go through the regular review but have not done that as of yet.
Thanks, Brad.
Okay, we'll go to Ryan Pike next.
Hey, Brad. Just out of curiosity, this seems from the outside like it would be a uniquely challenging year to be a manager between the taxi squad and the border and the flat cap and quarantines. What was it like, I guess, getting through the day-to-day of operating a hockey club in this kind of environment?
Yeah, Ryan, it was unique. Lots of challenges, but everybody went through it, right? So everybody, but there was some uniqueness. But it feels sort of that we've been, this new normal, we've been in it for a while now, right? You go back, it's been over a year since we've entered the COVID world. And it certainly has had its challenges. What we talked a lot about as a group is, yeah, there's challenges, but there's, you know, people out in the real world that are dealing with far more greater challenges than we are. In quite frankly, what we dealt with, as challenging as it was, in the big picture, there were inconveniences, as compared to what a lot of people were dealing with, right? And we took it as a real responsibility, real privilege to come back and play in a world where I think, you know, everybody was going through a lot of stuff, and hopefully we could be a distraction for that. We tried to take that responsibility on. So it was unique. There's, you know, with all the stuff that was going on, it was unique. You know, by no means was all the stuff that we went through, like everybody went through the same thing. So there's no hiding from the fact that our inability to get, you know, to be a playoff team had anything to do with the challenges, because everybody else was dealing with them as well. So we're not going to hide behind that. But it was unique. It was different. But we put it in the rightful place, at knowing that many more people were dealing with a lot more difficult stuff. But hopefully we don't have to go through it again.
And a couple of quick logistics questions for you. My understanding is for 21-22, it's a flat cap, but do you have any indication of any cap movement between years after that?
No, I mean, those are all the cap is the cap is a you know, it's a formula based upon revenue. And so you're always projecting what revenue will be. You don't know precisely until you get through that particular year and you do the calculation. But the expectation is that we're going to be in a flat cap world for the foreseeable future. Now, what is that? Is that a year, 2 years? Who knows? But certainly from our, you know, from a planning perspective, we don't anticipate much. We don't anticipate any movement in the cap for the foreseeable future.
And one last one, Brad Pascal, when Stockton finished up this season, he indicated that the organization's hope was to be back in Stockton next season. Do you have any updates on that?
Yep, that's our. We don't anticipate any you know, any problems with that. You know, certainly that was an area. You know, part of us moving, a big part of the reason we moved to Calgary this year was just not knowing if we were going to be able to play there, quite frankly. But things seem to be moving back closer to normal. So we don't anticipate any challenges or any problems in Stockton next year.
Okay, we'll go to Danny Austin next.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Brad. Johnny Gaudreau said this morning that he would love to sit down this summer and try to work out a long-term deal. Is that a priority for you and the club as well?
Well, talking to Johnny is one of, there's all sorts of priorities, and I'd put it on the to-do list for sure. And just kind of get a sense of where everybody's at. You know, you today is about, you sort of exhale, you meet with some players, you know, try to get a little bit of feedback. We've got organizational meetings next week in terms of, you know, Daryl and I need to sit down and spend some time going through some things. You know, since he's come here, we've been worrying about the next day and trying to win that game. So we got to sit down with everybody here. But I had a good talk with Johnny today, and, you know, we have a real good relationship and have talked over time. And, you know, he's expressed to me the desire to be here. And so we'll see where everything goes. At the end of the day, too, it's got to make sense for him. It's got to make sense for us. He's a terrific player. But certainly that's something that we'll have those discussions as the days and weeks go by here.
Fair enough. And then looking back on this year, I think looking at your young defensemen, obviously Noah Hannafin had a great year, but you guys were relying, and Daryl Sutter alluded to this, to some young guys sort of taking a big step forward. Do you think that, I mean, in terms of your sort of your younger defensemen, you guys were hoping for too much too soon a little bit?
I don't know if we're hoping for too much or too soon. A lot of times, you know, we have some internal thoughts, and what gets talked about on the outside, you know, we don't necessarily have control over that. But, you know, when you talk about, I still believe in these guys, and I think, You know, you look at even a guy like Rasmus Anderson, to me, he took a step, right? So you always have to, when you look at it, small picture, you have to look at where this guy was a year ago. There was a lot of talk going into the bubble last year that can Rasmus take a step to be a top 4 defenseman? You know, when Travis opted out and Razzie took that ice time, you know, he took a big step with that. Well, we came back a year later and he's taught, you know, a lot of the year he was spent in a top pairing role. Now, you know, you look back at it, was that fair to him? Was that the right move? You know, could we have changed partners earlier on? It's easy to second guess everything. But I think Raz took a big step this year, has continued to progress. Yusso was coming off a year that he missed a year of hockey. If you go back in time, and I've dealt with a number of players that have had that injury, it usually takes you a full year. So I think there's been some peaks and valleys with him this year, but that's no different than any young defenseman, you know, regardless of coming off a big surgery or big injury that he was. So the development path is never straight with players. There's going to be peaks and valleys. I thought we saw a little bit of that with our young defensemen this year, but I think there's some really good, they're really good players, and in my mind will be big parts of our future.
Just one more for me. Matthew Tkachuk, this may, and again, be one of those things that was external, so that's why I'm asking the guy who's internal. But I mean, there was potentially a perception this year that he might not quite have been the same player that he was in years past. How do you evaluate his contributions this year and the way he played?
With Matthew?
Yes.
I think Matthew is, you know, he takes a lot on. And he should. He's a top player, not only for us, but I think he's he's a top player in the league. I think I don't separate Matthew. We all probably had more to give. And if you look back in the year, there's probably some areas that we could be better in, you know, Matthew included. So I think we all take a step back and say, why was that? You know, is there things that we need to adjust in terms of, you know, individuals? How do we make them better? How do they get better? You know, what areas or roles do we put them in? How do we support them better with people around them? So, you know, I think Matthew has got a very high standard for how he wants to perform. We got a high standard for him. There's probably some times he fell below that. But you know, that goes with the territory of being a real top player. So, you know, Matthew dealt with an injury over the course of when we left the bubble that we didn't talk a lot about, you know, that prevented him from doing a lot of skating last summer. And he battled through that. But we, you know, when you have a season like we had and you fall short of expectations, we all can be a little bit better.
Okay, we'll go to Haley Salvia next.
Hi, Brad. You often say you take your cues from your team, and we heard from many players earlier this afternoon that they believe that this is a group that can win and can, you know, make a deep playoff run in the future. But how do you balance that message or that cue from your team with, you know, the underachievement this year and in years previous?
Well, you certainly try to balance it. You know, the reality is every team changes. Haley, you're never going to have the same team. Now, when you underachieve, you know, you have to take a deep dive. You know, this is a group that's been, you know, for the most part together for a long time. And, you know, we've worked around the edges. You know, is there other, you know, it's easy to come out and say, we got to make some moves, right? Everybody says, oh, you're going to make big changes. Well, there's got to be things that make sense. You don't just change for the sake of changing. You know, I like I said, I think it's a good group that's underachieved. Certainly it's not good enough. You know, the bottom line is you can go through all the reasons why when you are sitting here out of the playoffs, you're not good enough. So our team has got to change. And determining what those changes are is what we'll have to figure out. But I certainly think there was more. We had more to give as a group. We didn't achieve it. So now you have to look at it and say it's got to change. And you know, that'll be the job now between now and the start of next year.
Okay, we'll go to Salim Valji next.
Hi, Brad. Thanks for meeting with us. A few players throughout the season have said, you know, needing to compete for each other, managing highs and lows. It seemed like things that weren't necessarily related to the ice, but were talked about a fair bit. And even today, players mentioned that. As a manager, number one, has that feedback been conveyed to you? And how do you go about addressing those kind of intangibles with a roster?
I mean, can you, in terms of what now? So
Like the management of highs and lows, wanting and needing to play for each other and sort of for the jersey on the front as opposed to the name on the back. As a manager, how do you address those comments or those needs when players say those things?
Well, I think it's you know, and you've heard me say this, I think it's a very close group. I do think that they, you know, I don't think it's a selfish group when you say playing for each other or playing, you know, for the team. You know, ultimately when you fall short, there's all sorts of reasons why. So you have to, you know, as a manager and as a management group, we have to sort of cut through all the clutter and find out the reasons why we are sitting here talking with you guys today and not preparing for a playoff game. So that's all part of the process. I do think it was a different year when we talked a little bit earlier about, you know, with COVID, and it's something I've thought a lot about, especially with younger players, you know, with the restrictions the way they were, you know, and you're all living it the same way as we are, right? Those with families, you'd go home and you'd have people to talk to, right? And sort of vent when you needed to vent. Sometimes with some of these younger people, my feeling is, and we're going to talk a lot about this, is when you're on your own and things aren't going well at the office and all you got to do is look at the four walls every day, sometimes that can be difficult for them. And in some of these cases with these young people, they would have, you know, whether it be a girlfriend come in or a family member or an uncle or a mom or a dad or somebody come in and spend some time. That just wasn't available, right, this year. So dealing with the turbulence that you deal with in a year, it was different this year. You know, it just was different dealing with it. And again, this is an excuse. Everybody had to deal with this, but I think that was one thing that in some ways we didn't manage as good as we could have. You know, and like I said, it was difficult for some people when you're spending a lot of time on your own to manage through the pressures of an NHL season, and you don't have the outlet that you normally do in a regular season. So again, part of the things that we'll dissect as we're going through it here.
And just one more, a year like this where expectations maybe weren't met, does that alter dramatically sort of the 5-year plan or the direction of a franchise? How do you sort of manage moving on from this season, but also the longer term strategic planning for an organization?
Well, you do that all the time, Salam. You're always looking at what you know, what helps today and the impact moving forward. So you know, you're balancing that, right? You're balancing where your team is at, you know, where your core group is at, what changes you're going to make, how that affects you a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now. So, you know, not unlike any other year, you're gonna step back from this and really evaluate, you know, where your team's at, and you know, what you have to do to get the team to where you ultimately want to be, and that's having the ultimate success. So on days like this, it seems like it's so far away. We have some really good pieces here. We have to be real honest with ourselves of where we are, where we think the issues are, and in the areas that we can improve at. So that's what the days and weeks ahead are for.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Wes Gilbertson next.
Brad, this might be overlapping a little bit with what you just said, but I'm curious, like, how does the assessment change postseason when you feel like it's an underachieving season as opposed to being able to say, you know what, we didn't have a good enough team?
Mm-hmm. Well, you have to figure out, Wes, why there was underachievement, right? Was it the circumstances that you had some unique circumstances around this year? Was there injuries related that maybe people don't know about? Was there, did you not have the right mix? Did you not support people with the right, ancillary players, all those types of things. So, and you do that collectively and you do that individually. And, you go through, like, you can pick a player. Let's use Jacob Markstrom. We went out and made a big investment in Jacob. I think, and I feel today no different than I did the day we signed him. I think this guy's one of the top goaltenders in the league. And you look at his season, he was lights out to start the year. He got injured, and there was a period of time from when he was injured to it took him time to come back from the injury. And I think, in talking with Jacob even today, he was dealing with he got concussed, and he was dealing with a concussion for the first time in his career. And so you point to a period of time and say, okay, there's a reason we think that, his play was below what he's capable of playing. Then you saw at the end of the year, in my mind, he's back capable. So you're trying to find reasons and solutions for your questions. And so that's what you go through. In some ways, you made, the manager made mistakes on player evaluation potentially. You make mistakes on, the mix, or like I said, when you underachieve, you're trying to find the reasons for it. I don't think this was a bad team that played up to its capabilities. I think it was a team that didn't play to its capabilities and therefore fell short of its expectations. So you do that as a collective whole, and you go through each individual player and try to find a reason for it, and then correct that, make a correction.
Is Dylan Dubé on a flight to Latvia today, or did you have to hold him back?
Yeah, unfortunately, Dylan's not going to be able to participate in the World Championships. He was concussed yesterday. Was not doing good yesterday. Fortunately, is feeling better today, but had to inform Hockey Canada that he's going to have to take some time to recuperate here, and is unfortunately not going to be able to participate.
And just let me ask you one more. Besides Hanifin and Monahan, who we know about, does anyone need any sort of repairs after this season? Are there going to be guys who can't dive into the off season right away?
I had it written down. We've got a few things. Dylan, we just talked about. Both Noah had shoulder surgery a few weeks ago, right after he did it. Sean underwent hip surgery on Monday. It is already back home and recuperating. Josh Levo in Vancouver broke his thumb and didn't participate in the last game or last two games. And I think we're all the procedures that need to happen have happened. There's some rehab stuff that'll go on with a few guys, but I don't think we're having any more surgeries at this stage.
Okay, we'll go to Derrick Wills next.
Hi, Brad. I've got a few questions for you, if I could.
Yep.
You and Daryl have both talked about how tough it is to win in the NHL, scoring 0, 1, or 2 goals. And your team was actually 21 games above 500 when you got to 3 or more. Scoring was an issue for this team this year. Is that something you think can be fixed internally, or is it externally, or maybe a little bit of both?
I think it's probably a little bit of both, Derek. like I said, when you look back at the season, and that's when you really have to, coming into the year, I thought our depth was going to be an area of strength for us. We had some people we rely on for offense that undershot the bar what your expectation normally would be for them. We brought in some people to help us in that area. The season didn't go the way it was planned for them or us. What you find in this game, you can't just rely on one and two people to score. The teams that have success, and especially success at the hardest time of the year, is you need as many people chipping in as possible. So that's certainly an area that we got to look at, and whether that's increasing the production we get from those that we rely on it, but we've got to continue to add. We got to find ways to score throughout our lineup. It's hard. It's a hard league to win in, scoring 1 and 2 goals. So that's and that includes our back end and finding ways to generate more offense from the blue line.
Some think that you should tear this team down and start a rebuild, but do you believe that this team can be retooled and become a team that gets to the Stanley Cup playoffs and contends?
Well, we got to make changes. The answer is as we're currently constructed, no. We have to make some changes to our team, and how deep those changes will go, we'll have to determine that. It's easy to say, let's go and blow it up and get rid of everybody and start afresh. We have to, like I said, I think there's some really good pieces here. We've got to find a way to, continue to add core pieces to this team, but we got to find ways to make it a deeper team. It's one thing to look on paper and say we've got some depth, which I thought this year, but it's got to manifest itself to produce and make you a deeper team. So, where we changed and how deep we changed is probably going to be something we discuss over the course of the next few days.
Last one for you, Brad. When Milan Lucic was asked what was missing from this team, he said he thinks it's between the ears. Do you see it the same way?
Sorry, you cut out on me?
Yeah, when Milan Lucic was asked what he thinks is missing for this team, he said he thinks it's between the ears. Do you see it the same way?
I think that's certainly an area that we can grow in. Is when you say between the ears, obviously mentality, and I think there has been some steps taken there. I think as a group, there's some, we still. I would agree that there's some growth that can happen mentally with us, but I think there has been in a lot of guys. I think there's some guys that have taken big steps there, but to become battle hardened, it physical is one part, but this game tests you mentally a lot, and those that are able to withstand and be mentally strong and deal with the adversity and deal with the ups and downs and deal with how hard things can be, at the end of the day, usually are the ones that thrive. So I certainly think that's an area that we can be better in.
Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Derrick.
Okay, we'll go to Donna Spencer next.
Brad, how would you assess Daryl's handling of the team after he took over? Both Johnny and Matthew said today there was an adjustment for them personally.
Oh, I think there's probably an adjustment for a lot of players anytime you have a coaching change. We'll sit and evaluate and dive deeper. Like I said, Daryl and I got to spend some time to dig into it. But I thought overall, from a team standpoint, our team game was you can win with that team game, that we got to. Now, what we didn't do is score enough, but if I look at, the sort of the broad picture of Daryl's time here, our checking game became much tighter. We gave up a lot less. We played a style that you need to play to have success at the most important time of the year. But we didn't score enough. Now you can categorize that and say we didn't score enough before Darryl got here. So those are things that we have to dive into and look at. But overall, I think we took some big steps in terms of our team game. The shot attempts against, the shots against, the high danger chances against, those things that you really focus on in terms of the high danger chances, the type of chances that you're giving up. You don't have a chance to win when those things are, like they were at the beginning of the year. Our success really at the beginning of the year, a lot of nights was on the back of Jacob Markstrom being a top, or one of our goaltenders being a number one star. I thought if you look later in the year, we controlled a lot of the chance share. We spent a lot of time in the offensive zone. We didn't spend much time in the defensive zone. So I think the basis and the building blocks are there for a successful brand. But we'll dig into it, him and I, and find out, come up with some solutions. But overall, I thought he did a real good job.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Mark Steven.
Thank you, Brad. Just over the course of the season, looking back, was there a time, a game, or a moment when you sensed that things were starting to unravel? Because off to a good start, but for much of the season, you were playing catch up in an attempt to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, I don't know, Mark, if there's a point. I found that we just couldn't get traction is what I kept coming back to. As I said it earlier, what the best we did was a 3-game winning streak. You guys saw it. You would watch. You guys watch the games and see us on a pretty regular basis. Like we just couldn't. We couldn't build traction. There'd be moments. There'd be glimpses. There'd be stretches. And I said, even after the coaching change, I thought we did a lot better job in terms of, you talk to teams that played against us. It wasn't an easy team to play against. We didn't give up. There wasn't a lot of space. We didn't give up much, but we needed to create more. But I don't know, Mark, if there's a game or a moment. I was uneasy most of the year. Ultimately, it's why we made the change that we did when Darryl came in. Those are never fun to do, but I felt we needed to do it to give ourselves we needed to make the change, but it just unable to really build consistency in our game, and that plagued us all year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and the final question, we'll go to Brendan Parker.
Brad, I was going to ask you about, you mentioned Jacob Markstrom, but one of the other guys that jumps to mind to be about Chris Tanev, both a new guy and the presence. You heard from, a lot of guys this year about what he brought to the team. I just wonder from your perspective, what his presence meant. It seemed like he's, really endeared himself to Flames fans who maybe didn't know exactly what to expect from him coming in, but just, what you thought of the stability he gave your back end and your group.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Chris. I thought, he's a consummate pro. I thought, I think I said it when we signed him. He's just a real stabilizer. I think he just, he makes those around him better. He's a lot of his game's underrated. We talk about how well he defends, but he moves well. He gets you out of his end with his puck ability. And I never get into injuries unless you guys ask me about them where we want to, but I don't know if I've ever seen a player play through what this guy played through this year, for a period of time of about a month, when we were writing you know, and he played till the end, and he wasn't going to come out, but he took a hit here. I think you guys remember against Winnipeg, Dubois. I think the end toll was he broke a couple of ribs and tore a pec muscle. And I think he missed a practice. And so that tells you a little bit about Chris Tanev. I've never seen a guy play. I've seen some guys play through some stuff. So he's, you know, you talk about the culture of winning and what it takes to win. This guy puts it on the line, and we're lucky to have him, in my opinion.
Okay, we'll go to Peter Lobardius next.
Brad, from the outside looking in, this year just seemed to weigh very heavily on anybody involved. How was it for you personally? And how much of a change was it for you in the coaching change, just in terms of the type of people that you were dealing with in comparison?
Well, what kind of year it was for me? I think it was just strange for all of us. It's hard, right? And again, I say that there's no excuses here. We didn't get it done. So we had the same environment. We were dealing with the same environment everybody else was. And like I said, there's people out there having to deal with a whole lot worse than we were, but it was unique. You get up every day, you test, you come in, you go on the road, you're living in this bubble, right? So it wasn't without its challenges, but everybody had the same challenges. I thought our group, like I do probably should have said earlier, but I want to really thank and commend our medical group for how they handled this. They've been going at this really for over a year now. I think that, they're the ones that, they put the protocols in. The job that they've done is second to none. We had one case, they were able to get on it quick and it didn't spread and we didn't miss any time, but this year's been challenging for everybody. But that's the way it was for everybody. Ultimately, you've got to find a way to get it done in whatever circumstances you're in. We didn't find a way to get it done. Was there a second piece to that I missed, Pete?
No, Brad, I was asking just about maybe the difference in, going from Jeff and his approach and Daryl and his approach, just for you personally, and how you found that transition, not only for you, but for your group.
Yeah. I mean, certainly different coaches, and I thought Jeff gave all he could here. Jeff's a good man, really good. Will continue to, I think, be a real good coach in this league. He wore it every day. He wanted there to be success here. Unfortunately, when you're the manager, you have to make those calls, and I felt that, we had to make a move here. The thing with Daryl is he's going to be brutally honest every day with you. I think all players will know where they're going to stand. I think that's what you want as a player, is know exactly where you stand. And he's going to push you, and it's going to make you better. And I think even talking with our guys today, I think there's some guys that it took a little while to get used to Daryl. But he's going to make you a better player. He's going to push, he's going to get stuff out of you that maybe you didn't know you were able to, get you to a level that you didn't know you could get to. But it's not always going to be easy, and it shouldn't be easy, and to have success isn't easy. So, I think he's going to, I think we've just started to see the the impact that he's going to have on this team. And I think he'll have a big one going forward.
Thanks, Brad. Appreciate it.
If that's all the questions, I do want to take this time to thank all the media. I know it hasn't been easy for you folks, and I get to see your little faces on this when I've done media scrums, but appreciate all your coverage of the team. I wish you all safe. Hopefully we're getting to the end of this and to the other side of it. Make sure you get your shots and you get looked after, but wish you all safety and wish you all very well. And hopefully we'll see you in person here at some point soon. So have a good summer, everybody. And thanks again for all your coverage throughout the year.